Hello everybody and welcome to the fifth webinar offered by the STAMP project. I'm Antonia Ferrari and together within the next hour we'll discuss possible ways consisting of both notions and practices that might be effective when we are involved in a musical project which aims to promote social inclusion. Before we start, please I'd like to make sure that the sound is okay and we can move on. Is everything okay with the sound? You can have your reply at the toolbar on your left-hand side. Thank you. Great. Thank you, guys. We move on. Before we start to develop this possible roadmap, let me first tell you a few things about myself. I'm not doing this simply to introduce myself. I'm doing it to help you understand my way of conceptualizing and working with music towards social inclusion. First of all, I'm Greek Cypriot and I live in Nicosia, Cyprus. Although my bachelor degree was in musicology, I pursued for graduate studies in music education at the Institute of Education, University of London, with Professor Lucy Green, and my research interests focused on issues of policymaking and music curriculum viewed from a sociological perspective. So I consider myself, academically speaking, a sociologist of music education who is sensitive towards issues of equity, inclusion, and meaningful to all musical experiences. Meaningful to all is what I stressed so far. Also, I work as a secondary music teacher, and for years I'm working at the Department of Secondary Music Education at the Cyprus Ministry of Education and Culture, where I am involved, among other things, in teacher training, development of music curricula, production of educational material, organization and management of music festivals and events. So in terms of my professional identity, I am a music educator who largely trains music teachers and musicians how to be efficient through their teaching practices when they attempt to develop their students' skills towards several sociological issues in education, such as intercultural education, active citizenship, and sustainable development. I think this information is enough to give you an overall idea of where I come from and from which perspective I understand and work with music and social inclusion. I hope that by the completion of this webinar, you will gain some knowledge in order to understand the main issues that animate in the area, that you will develop some skills on how to be efficient in practice, and finally, I hope that you will acquire musical attitudes, behaviors, and strategies which are particularly necessary when you design, implement, or assess a musical project, or any forms of musical activities which aim to promote social inclusion through music. Our webinar is entitled From the Listening Ears to the Hearing Heart, a possible roadmap for social inclusion through music. Thus, the two key areas we will focus on are music and social inclusion. But before we begin to examine these two topic areas and possible ways they relate, we need to answer two preliminary key questions. Question 1. In what possible ways each one of you might see yourself involved in a musical project which promotes social inclusion? This question particularly will enable you to position yourself and to see how you can professionally relate with this webinar. For this reason, we actually created a poll which covers various professional identities a musician might obtain, which can be divided according to three main stages of a project. And let's say these three big stages are the project preparation, its implementation, and its assessment. Great. We've got three questions. Which of you might get involved in the first stage when the project is prepared and designed? For example, you might be a project manager in a cultural organization or a university who wants a school who wants to include a social inclusion project in its program schedule, and you are asked to plan it. Or you might have your own music group and you are a performer and you are interested in offering, let's say, selling such projects. Or you might be a composer and an arranger who is appointed to write music. You might be a music teacher and you need to design such a project for your school. These are a few examples coming from the stage when a project is being prepared. Please vote yes or no according to the stage you fall in at stage 1, which is the design. Let's move on to see a few examples for stage 2, which covers which of you might get involved in the stage when a project is implemented. You might be a performer, a singer, a DJ, and you need to play music for a specific event. Or you might be asked to engage people musically in a project. You are a music teacher and you want to teach the project musical activities. These are a few professional identities which fall into category stage 2. And the final stage is when the project is received by the audience and it is assessed. Does it make an impact? Is it effective towards social inclusion? For example, you are the project leader and you want to assess its effectiveness and furthermore to assess future alternative approaches. In the media, let's see, okay, thank you, I'm here. Hope you are too, thank you. Let's say you are working in the media and you are a music producer and you want to discuss a music project with your audience. You are an ethnomusicologist, a social science researcher, and you want to look at how different musical cultures communicate with each other to promote social inclusion. Or you are an active, passionate, and critical listener of music. So these are the three stages. Each one includes various professional identities a musician might have. But before you position yourself with your vote, okay, you can vote, see, okay, thank you. We'll watch a short video which shows some identities which can be engaged in such a project. I'm not going to say anything about this particular one because we are going to see to discuss.
So we're 15 years old this year, and we're celebrating that by commissioning 5 new pieces that are inspired by our first ever show. So we've taken these 5 pieces and given them to 5 young emerging composers. They've worked with our performers, they've created new stories. Our performers have created the text to these stories, and the composers have written 5 new pieces that are being premiered at the moment all around the country.
So I'm Anna Appleby. I'm a composer. I live in Manchester, but I'm originally from Newcastle, which is in the northeast of England. I'm their composer in residence for Manchester. So there's about up to 50 streetwise performers in Manchester that I've worked with, but that group changes a lot, so I've met and interacted with a lot of different people. I've hung out with their ensembles for the past year, and I've written a piece with them and for them.
Can you please Stand up from your chairs and come into the space for me.
My piece is inspired by Edith Sitwell's Still Falls the Rain. The original poem's about bombs falling.
And you're going to bow.
So we've taken that image of falling and we've made this piece which is about the statue of a dictator in an apocryphal town square that's about to fall, and all the different responses everyone has to it. And the performers really reacted a lot to this scenario and they came up with some amazing words. And then I've taken those words and I've written a short 5-minute opera chorus. But I constantly fed back to the Streetwise leaders to make sure it's the right kind of thing for the performers, because the performers learn everything by ear. The fantastic workshop leaders will lead from the piano and they'll teach everything using their hands like this. So I had to write something that was going to be memorable enough that they could pick it up by ear. I think they love music, they love drama as well. They enjoy being with each other and not having to focus on what's happened in their lives. It's a space that they can come and forget about that just for a couple of hours and create something together. I knew it was going to be collaborative, I knew it would be fun, but I think it's changed me this year more than I could have imagined. You know, I think when someone's had something really difficult in their life happen, people can often focus on that as being the thing that defines them. And it's so patronizing for society to look at people who are in a difficult situation and just think that that is them, because it's not them, it's something that's happened to them. Streetwise has a motto that you don't focus on homelessness, you focus on music, and that frees people.
I don't think we've ever had a bad performance, and I think the general public or the people who come to see us are a little bit taken back at what they see.
Oh, I loved it. There's a kind of love across that stage that goes both across the performers and out to people. The audience is struck by the humility of the performers and then reflect on their own position there. So how do I stand in relation to these people day in, day out? And that's humbling, isn't it?
It's just a life-changing magic of doing something terrifying and connecting with an audience that might have a misconception of what homelessness is. We get to invite them to come and see people perform as individuals, talented individuals, humans. You know, people can relate to each other again and people can connect, and to see people's self-confidence grow when they do those performances is amazing.
I guess what's convinced me that Streetwise Opera works is when you see someone who's sleeping on the street.
Okay, so now we've seen in these 3 stages several professional identities that we might obtain to be involved in this in the project. Let's move on. Please do not forget at which stage you might be involved in a social inclusion project, since it will enable you to see how the content of this webinar might be useful and relevant to you. Let's see how many of you fall into stage 1. No. Well, we've got 5 people working in stage 1, design. It will be great if you can write in the toolbar on the left-hand side to see more specifically how you are involved. Also, those 5 people involved in implementation and assessment. So we've got some ideas and we can meet each other and know each other. Okay, thank you, Jacob. It's time now. Let's see just to get some idea what our professional identities are. Great, Jacob. I hope it's okay my pronunciation of your name. Thank you. Performer. Great. So as a performer, we might be involved in stage 1 and 2. Production. Mariana. Thank you, Mariana. Great. So because time is running, we'll see. Yes, Natasha, thank you. Let's move on to question 2 and find out why we music professionals need to get involved in a project on social inclusion. Or to put it differently, how can music contribute in fostering social inclusion? Because this will in turn enlighten us how to find out how we should be working with such a project, which constitutes obviously the main aim of this webinar. The answer to this question is relatively easy. Let's take a look at the current social, political and economic situation in Europe. Several countries, especially in Northern Europe, are facing prolonged period of low economic and employment growth. As a result, access to labor market has been reduced and people have been experiencing poor living conditions in terms of housing, nutrition and clothing. People became homeless and living in poverty. Thus, poverty and unemployment became apparent and people are prevented from having access to healthcare and social services where they need to. People's well-being is affected since they cannot enjoy life within their community. Obviously, they are unable to enjoy any cultural or social activities such as music. So because of these difficulties they encounter, they feel excluded and they are isolated from their society. To sum up, these are conditions which designate deprivation, both material deprivation and non-material deprivation. So this deprivation refrains them from enjoying fundamental human rights, such as the right to work, to be healthy, to live well. Well-being is the formal term. So this deprivation displaces those citizens in the margins of their society, so they cannot act as active and happy citizens in their society. Hence, they get socially excluded. Let's see.
In a city or town and you maybe have a few words with somebody, but that's as much contact that you have with somebody who is sleeping out in the street. And when you meet these wonderful people, you realize, first of all, that could have been my fate, but I've got so much to learn from them. They are such wonderful, lovely people.
Hi. An introduction to
Recent findings on poverty and social exclusion in the European Union show that almost every fourth person in the EU experiences at least one of 3 forms of poverty or social exclusion: monetary poverty, severe material deprivation, or very low work household intensity. The Europe 2020 strategy is the EU's agenda to promote social inclusion, in particular through the reduction of poverty, by aiming to leave at least 20 million people out of the risk of poverty and social exclusion. Also, there are European citizens who face social exclusion because of their gender, their religion, color, their sexual preferences, even their weight. These are people who are also at risk of social exclusion because they are hindered from exercising their fundamental rights, and their everyday life and long-term future might be threatened. Social exclusion is also based on social inequalities, such as when people are suffering from discriminatory practices and attitudes. Similar case is the people with disabilities. These people have the right to be occupationally integrated in their society, to be financially secure, to participate in the life of their community, and to be socially included. So for people with disabilities, to some extent, social inclusion equals to enable them to be active and independent, and to have access to social and cultural activities such as music. Our next video is from a music project called Drake Music, which aims to promote equal access to music making for everyone. In this project, people with disabilities break down disabling barriers to music.
I think you should vote for Drake Music because they're awesome. They open up opportunities in music for severely disabled people of all ages who wouldn't otherwise be able to access music, their musical instruments.
Thank you. During the last years, we are also strongly concerned with terrorism. It has caused us insecurity and fear. Our security has been challenged, and it affected our feelings and our wish to move freely and prosper across Europe. These are just some examples relating to social exclusion in Europe. What about non-European nationals living in Europe? Europe accepted uncontrolled migratory flows and is still accepting refugees. Despite all measures and actions taken in different levels to face the problem still exists. Many refugees are still living in tents and hotspots, as it is the case in Cyprus, and suffer from poor living standards. Hundreds of children arrive in Europe without their parents. These people, even because of their lack of residence, lose many of their human rights because of their legal status. These people become socially excluded. These are some parameters that remind us that we are living in a complex multicultural world which is facing social, economic, and political difficulties. At the same time, our societies are becoming technologically advanced, they are fast-paced, and extremely competitive. Within this frame, we, European citizens, need to be competent and critical to understand the complexity of our modern society so that we overcome a wide spectrum of difficulties, not only financial, but also issues relating to our well-being, as well as social inclusion. It is for this reason that formal policy agendas and declarations by the European Union stress the need for EU citizens who are innovative, creative, competitive. They are entrepreneurial. For citizens who are all including the most vulnerable, engaged and active, who can think and act, in relation to civic, democratic, intercultural issues and live happily and enjoy their life. It is exactly at this point that music and we, as music professionals, can make a contribution. For when people get engaged with music and musical practices, they develop to a great extent the aforementioned broad set of competencies needed for future life in Europe. In other words, music can develop those skills, knowledge and attitude EU declares that European citizens need to have. The first two videos we have watched came from an award-winning project in England called Streetwise Opera. It started in 2002 and works with people who have experienced homelessness and other members of the community. It uses music to help people make positive changes in their lives. It runs music workshops across England and stages world-known opera productions.
I feel I got the best job anywhere. I love the arts. I'm evangelical about the arts and its power to change society. You know, everybody has a right to access arts and creativity, and that nurtures us. It makes us human. It creates fewer divisions. It brings people together. It does so much that's valuable in society. The arts is an extraordinary tool. It's something that is in everyone. It's something we're born with. And sometimes that gets lost along the way. And when you remind people that they have ideas and they have ways of showing themselves what they can achieve, it can help people believe in themselves. If I can do this, what else can I achieve in my life? It's a wonderful part of ourselves that we need to enrich. It's quite a challenging concept to put homeless people with opera. That concept will make some people think that's ridiculous. You know, homeless people need much more than, you know, entertainment or the arts. And in a way, I enjoy proving people wrong.
Mariana, you need to check your computer for the audio because it appears that for the rest of us it's okay. Thank you. We move on now to the main topic area of our webinar and see. We take things from the beginning, which is stage one, the preparation of the project. The first the first thing you need to pay attention to is the description of the project. Either you are the one who are going to write it up, or you are given and then you have to plan it. Particularly, attention needs to be paid to its specific aims and expected outcomes. For example, if it is a project which aims to reduce poverty, it will be designed in a completely different way, and it will have different emphasis than if it was on social exclusion. Poverty, for example, as we have already discussed, it is a materialistic term, whereas social exclusion is a wider term which can also refer to non-materialistic difficulties a social group might be facing. For example, an upper-class white man who is financially solvent might be socially excluded because of his sexual orientation. These are examples of social exclusion, which point out that we need to pay attention to the terms included in the description of the project. In this way, we will make sure that everything that we put in the project is related to its essence, to its aims, So terminology automatically defines the very nature and the ontology of the project. Secondly, we need to find out for which actors or social groups the project is. So it is important that all musical identities are celebrated within a project. This point means that all music are meaningful to all people. So to have meaning, positive musical meaning, we need to the area, some theories of musical meaning and experience, but because it will help us prevent musical alienation. For the purposes of this particular project, I will refer to Lucy Green's theory of musical meaning in 1988, who makes a theoretical distinction between two types of musical meaning. Both types of meaning for Green coexist in every musical experience, although we are not able to distinguish them or differentiate them experientially when we engage with music. This distinction contributes to our theoretical understanding of musical experience, which will in turn have some practical implications for us. The first type of musical meaning is what Green names as inherent musical meaning. It refers to the organization of the sound within of music and the extent this organization of sound is understood or at least well received by the listener. For example, in relation to its harmony, is it pentatonic or major minor? Is it a familiar sound, rhythm, polyrhythmic, or compound mixture of simple rhythm? So the inherent meanings are the sign of music that music sends, and as a sign it has its reference, and this reference though its constituents are non-music, social meaning. An example of delineated meaning is the or a composer with national identity. Let's say when somebody listens to the national anthem of his country, positive meaning might be produced on nostalgia or something social. So the second type of musical meaning refers to constituents related to the social context of music, such as class, ethnic, race, political, gender, age, and so on. So inherent meaning is sound to sound, and delineated is from sound to sound. This is what Green points out. As I already said that this dialectical relationship is only theoretical, but it is useful to foster positive experiences and constructive musical communication within a project. Because if participants understand both types of meaning, then the project will not alienate them. So what we are looking for is to have affirmative and positive meanings with both types of meaning. Otherwise, people might get alienated, or musical ambiguity will be produced if either one of these two types are in contradiction with each other. From our part then, musical multiple perspective or exploration of music needs to be made. Let's say that experiences of the project participants, we need to ensure that in this way our celebrates on a fair basis social inclusion, which is not simplistic. I'll give you an example of a simplistic approach, which is not considered a good practice. Say you are attending a project on ethnic inclusiveness. It is developed in an open-air venue in your city, in a big square, and so on. Several ethnic music groups can play their music and leave. People come by, listen to them, participate, and blah, blah, blah. Souvenirs are available for sale. Food is available. Flags and decorate the place. I'm sure you get the picture I have in mind. This approach cannot be considered effective because those ethnic groups see each other from a distance. They do not spot the musical practices and meanings that connect them or that they separate them. They do not get to know each other musically and socially. Hence, fear, prejudice, and negative meanings created. Here is an example.
This project called With One Voice, which is connecting arts and homelessness organisations around the world, because together we are stronger, and we can find that sharing policy, sharing bits of encouragement is just helping everyone. It makes you feel not alone.
It's like a dream come true. That's wonderful. And it's changed my life forever. It's coming here now over here in a streetwise opera.
Thanks Streetwise for changing my life. Really do appreciate it, and I hope there's so many more years to come.
It is a wonderful organisation. I'm very proud to be a part of it.
2.5 years ago when I first came to the centre, you couldn't get me to say 5 words. Now you can't shut me up. Now I've got my own home again. I put a lot of time back into the centre volunteering, and was offered last year with Streetwise to become an ambassador. Yeah, I've got me confidence back.
With Streetwise Opera, people count. You know, people are the opera, and it's everyday people from the streets. But it's genuine and it's positive.
I think we're all stopped by the unknown, and sometimes we want to do something, but the risk holds us back. You know, it's liberating saying, okay, some things just seem so crazy that they're practically impossible, but we've seen over the course of the last 15 years that so many things that seem to be impossible are just hard, and there's a big difference.
So let's say we've seen, just to make a sum up and move forward, people when engaged in a musical project need to have positive relationship with both the music's sound itself per se and its social meanings the music has. Thank you. We move on now to, and we've seen a model which is very helpful theoretically and practically in when a project is implemented. Let's see stage 2 and see some good practices. I'm sure you've already seen a few in the videos.
Hi, I'm Jermaine. I'm standing outside the South Bank Centre, ready to attend the Streetwise workshop.
Danger waits at every corner, but I still love you.
Hi everybody, I'm Brian and I'm at the Booth Centre. I'm off to Streetwise Opera.
I walked past the workshop that was going on, which was still heard all these voices, these amazing voices.
On the burning shore, by the sleeping sea, never stop your dancing.
They've got an amazing way of just being so welcoming. When you walk in, they're always just like, welcome, come in. So, yeah, they just invited me in and I, kept coming back.
Welcome to Streetwise Opera. Great to see so many faces this morning. As you know, my name is Gavin. I think most of you know who I am. And this is David. We're both workshop leaders this morning.
There's no sort of them and us. It's very much a group session.
Just participate as much as you want. But I think it's also really great, particularly new people. Sometimes really great just to really give something a go.
My favourite part of the workshop is probably the warm-up.
And let's just get a little click going. So we really feel like we're working as a team. If you can't click, just you can snap your legs.
We just go round the circle and say our name.
Rob, Ronnie, Gavin, Julia.
You don't have to be a singer. As long as you join in, enjoy yourself, and you have a really good time.
Do a different opera each time.
The whole story is based around somebody puts a curse on Rigoletto in the first scene.
We do exercises and games around certain words or themes.
Like we were last week, we're on the beach. Because our opera is set on the beach.
It's a time where you can explore operas, and it's a time to meet other people that have a like mind and like to just come along and relax and sing and basically enjoy yourself.
We not only act and watch operas, but it also improves our self-esteem, our self-confidence, and we are able to go out into the world and do better things.
So the question is, how are we going to make people, mostly amateurs, to play and sing music together? You've seen some approaches, and I'll discuss those approaches and add a few more, which will be helpful for you. I'll be able to stay with you for about 10 minutes more to cover and have some discussion and see how we can put into practice those issues we talk about. So bear with us and we'll finish on quickly. So I'm sorry about this. The problem is persistent. We move on and see some approaches to good practice. We cannot expect people to sing or play music by reading notation. So music needs to be learned by ear. In this case, the primarily work needs to be done orally by listening and copying music by ear. This learning process calls for a need to adopt informal learning practices. So let's take both a look at the framework within these informal learning practices in music can be developed. First, you can ask the participants First, you can ask the participants to get into friendship groups, into peers they choose for themselves. Then you can start singing or playing music. Most preferably at the beginning, it might be better to start with their own music, their own musical identity. And so you are going to be the musical model, and they can sing back. Ask everybody to join in when they feel comfortable and participate in any way they can by singing or playing instruments of their choice. Also, in some cases, especially during this learning process. Additionally, you can invite people We deeply apologize. I know this must be a bit frustrating for you. Is it okay now? We are towards the end. Can you hear me? Hello, people? Yes, okay, thank you. Great, great. We deeply apologize. As soon as people join in, then you can ask them to be more creative and improvise or compose informally. In this way, their personal creativity is given space to unfold, to communicate with other musical identities and to thrill. Then, as the project unfolds, foreign, let's say, musical groups can be added. We are here, we are fighters. Then you can add other musical groups, and when they engage with each other, with different musical cultures, they will produce positive meanings, both inherent and delineated, and any existing prejudices can be deleted. This is a point that theory makes meaning. The theory of musical meaning, it comes into sense. So it is very important to give participants, especially those who are socially excluded, opportunities for musical practice and communication. In this way, they feel celebrated and not excluded or discriminated. Informal, it's clear that this process is not a linear one. It is chaotic, the learning it will get back and forth. So don't be afraid of this and expect it and give space to allow it. So what is important to have in mind is that this process is a process of becoming, of rebirthing instead of a musical product or the outcome of a project. That is not the case. It is a process. So it is within this framework, this mentality that the project needs to be assessed at stage 3. It is its meaningfulness to each individual participant that matters. In this sense, projects on social inclusion can be assessed according to the specific values of each participant, which become objective and valid when personal criteria and meanings are explicitly defined. This type of assessment is called authentic assessment and does not value standardized measures and values. The real value of a musical project on social inclusion is the trajectory, the way that somebody makes from the listening ears to the hearing hearts. To close our webinar, we will attempt to put into practice what we have talked about. We will watch a small short video which was used to reduce poverty in Africa, and we can later discuss how we can change this particular project into a social inclusion project, because as we have talked, discussed, it is a completely different way of designing and developing projects. So I will show you some parameters that we can focus on, and we can see how these parameters can be rearranged so that from a project on social poverty or a project on poverty, it can be changed to promote social inclusion. The Okay, so we'll watch this video on social poverty, and together we are going to change it into a social inclusion project. It is a project with a popular Greek singer called Alkis Kodopsalti. She went with her musicians in Africa, Kenya, and performed music to children of an orphanage. And she's specifically this video shows her singing a Greek song, a popular one, to the kids. Please pay attention how we can change the setup, the relationship between, the communication between musicians and the children, the setup of the stage and the audience, their musical identities, which of these are celebrated, the song it will be in Greek, how the communication is developed, is there a production of musical meaning to both inherent and delineated, do they engage positively all musics, all identities, can there be an authentic assessment so that it will be effective? Let's watch the video and then we can discuss its transformation. Okay, so you got the idea. Any suggestions that we can, how we can transform this poverty project, musical project, into social inclusion? Let's see how we can change the setup between musicians and children. So they are opposite. Say which arrangement might be more useful so they become equal. Rows, circle maybe? Which dynamic do you think? Can you hear me? Oh yeah, thank you. Answer, yes. Thank you, Isabel. A circle, and especially musical circles, foster musical communication because all actors become equal. So this setup, rather than a stage which shows hierarchy between musicians and the setup. A musical circle will be much more convenient to foster a different dynamic between the actors and the different musical identities. Let's see what can we change so that musical identities can be celebrated. Those children have identities from African culture and global culture. They are listening to a Greek song. Can they get the inherent and delineated meanings of the song? Not particularly, isn't it? So what can be done so that this musical performance is positive, is a positive musical experience? Let's see some ideas. It's a Greek song. It was a very famous one in Greece and Cyprus, but I'm sure you can get the point that for this kid, yes. Thank you, Ignacio Prienko. Thank you. That's it. We can combine and mix different musical genres and attempt to have understanding in both types of meaning, and also to have some practical engagement. I'm sure you could see that a few of the kids were struggling to participate. So to have inclusion, it needs to be a positive role for the engagement. So that is why authentic assessment, which is a type of assessment that is considered much more fruitful than a summative assessment with numbers. And so we need a project that will give us data at the end that it shows effectiveness in terms of positive musical meanings for the participants. And these are some possible ways how this project and, on music and social inclusion can be effective. We deeply apologize for the difficulties in terms of technology. I hope that it was a fruitful and joyful experience for you. For me, participating in the activities of the STAMP project, it was a very joyful experience. Thank you very much for your patience. I will give you my email, so if any of you have any questions, or we can Skype, we can answer questions on anything. I believe that we foster inclusion despite all these technology barriers that we had. Next week, Professor Lee Higgins, again from CCRSM, the Cyprus Center for Research in Music, will be talking about how we can position ourselves in terms of community music, practice, theory, and critical lens. Thank you very much for your patience and your participation. I especially thank Nikos. He was our hero today, and Avram. I will type now my email at the toolbar, so any of you can email me, and we'll be in touch. We are not losing contact. It is antonia.forari@gmail.com. Thank you, people. Thank you, everybody. It was lovely. I hope it was fruitful and joyful. Thank you, Isabel. It was pleasure. My pleasure.